Got it? Let's not see. Here's what guys get hung up on, particularly guys with a literalist mindset. Oh, I wouldn't want to mess with any of this stuff. I would never bother with any of this game. I would just tell, hey, bitch, are you DTF? Really? Okay, so am I. This is indirect game. These are social skills.
Mode 1.
One of the reasons why direct game is so popular is because most guys don't have the patience or the skill to learn real game, any kind of formal indirect game. Even though they would probably get with girls that they could have got had they gone indirect rather than going direct. So what is it about direct game? Now, direct game is direct game came from indirect game. Now, people don't understand. I wrote about this in book 5, by the way. This is the history of direct game versus indirect game. Now, direct game was inspired originally by guys who were like in the gamosphere, like in the seduction communities, right? And they're like, you know what? I'm wasting my time gaming these girls who are already like, their buying temperature's up anyway. So why am I like, wasting my time with these girls? I'm just going to be straight up blunt and direct with them. And what they didn't account for was all the warm up to get to the point where they could be direct. Henry Cavill has no earthly idea what game is, or doesn't have to know what game is, because he walks into a room and he knows that the women in there want to have sex with him. Got it. Okay. So as far as direct game versus indirect game is concerned, the guys who came up with quote unquote direct game, even where the title of it came from, was guys who were already doing indirect game who go, you know what? I know enough about this game stuff now that I can like use it directly and just not waste time and move on with a sort of a warm buyer. It's not a cold call anymore at that point. And so it's not just about like, I don't want to waste my time. In a sense, you don't want to waste time. I get it. You don't want to play games with girls, whatever. Understood. But what happens is most guys take that and they throw it. Let's say direct only works when she gives you the vibes from yeah, exactly. Funny you should say that, because a lot of the guys who were proponents of formal indirect game would have agreed with you 100%, right? Straight facts, but it's best to just play with her. Yeah, exactly. Well, here's the thing, Sancho. That's such a good comment here. I'll give you one of these. That's such a good comment. Because the thing is like there still has to be that initial arousal. There has to be that attraction between, the physical attraction between you and that girl before you can even consider indirect game. Now, when I was doing the build up and I was doing the research and the work for book 5, when I was talking about the section on direct versus indirect game, what I was getting into was the history of it. It was the history of the direct game versus indirect game. I wasn't like saying one's better than the other. In fact, one might be more effective in different situations than the other one would be. However, and this is like, I was directly quoting Mystery when I said this. I said the things that like the girls that you lose through direct game, you could have more easily gotten had you used indirect game. Because you gave her a creepy vibe. Well, he was creepy because he just said, hey, are you down to fuck? Right? That might creep a girl out. Sometimes the girls you would have lost through direct game, you would have gotten had you used indirect game, and vice versa. And I would argue that direct game is really kind of equitable with a war of attrition, whereas indirect game is really more about strategy, technique, flanking, understanding things, understanding yourself, understanding your enemy, right? And I'm not saying she's the enemy. I'm just saying like your opponent, your whoever it is that you're playing with, I guess. So and as I said, that was the whole thing about direct versus indirect game. When you read the book, you will understand what I'm talking about. I'm trying to clarify this a little bit more because I had a lot of people coming at me going, oh, you're coming after AlanRogerCurrie, blah, 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 mode 1. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Not one thing. I'm talking about guys who are in the seduction community during 2002, 2001, 2004, 5. And that's the difference. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying they're both tools as a means to an end.
Now, you just heard the intro and the commentary by book author and red pill enthusiast Rollo Tomassi. Now, honestly, I wouldn't have commented on this if I didn't hear my name. A couple of my followers actually sent me that clip from his video. So I thought I'd take a little time to offer my thoughts, comments, and disagreements with the stuff he said. I'll start here. I don't know what it is with guys that either one or two things, when they try to impersonate me individually or try to impersonate guys who are direct, I'll just start with me. A lot of guys who call themselves impersonating me. Two things they always have wrong. Number one, they always have my voice talking real loud. And some of y'all have heard this story. I'm probably going to tell again. I haven't probably told this story in about 2 years. But just recently, like you heard Rollo, I don't know for sure if Rollo was trying to impersonate me. Seemed like he might have been just trying to impersonate a guy being direct with a woman, period. But did you notice how he was talking like a dumb jock, a loudmouth dumb jock? Like, hey, are you down to fuck? Hey, baby, are you down to fuck? Like, let's be real. I know people try to exaggerate, for humor purposes, but who the fuck talks like that? I mean, seriously, who the fuck talks like that? I know for damn sure I don't. Then that European PUA who I was talking about in my live stream in my very last video, J.A. He had a clip on a live stream where he had me talking like that. He was talking about some other dude approaching a woman. And then he said, yeah, I bet if that was AlanRogerCurrie, he would come up to the woman and say, hey, I want to fuck you hard. I want to fuck you hard. I want to make you come. I want to fuck you hard. Again, I realize that they're doing a little bit of embellishment and exaggeration for maybe comedic effect, but here's what's interesting on a somewhat lighthearted side note. I've never heard any man that had me down like that when it comes to what I would call my smooth, seductive voice. Now, one time I was on this young brother, Bernard Riley's channel, I think either last year or the year before last, and some guys were imitating my angry, irritated voice, which tends to cause my inflection to go up. Yeah, when I'm angry or irritated about what I'm talking about, my inflection, what's known as your vocal inflection, my vocal inflection tends to go up. But I'm talking about my smooth when I'm talking to women. I've never heard a man who had me down. Since I've been on YouTube, and really since I've been in the manosphere period. Interesting enough, who has me down the best? Women. If you used to listen to me on my Blog Talk Radio show, every now and then a woman would call into my Blog Talk Radio show and they would say, Alan, I know how to do you. I know how to impersonate you. And I would say, okay, go for it. And I have to admit, man, there were probably at least 4 or 5 women who had me down. They had me down. Honestly, man, I ain't never really heard a man who had me down. Again, when it comes to my smooth, seductive voice, I ain't talking about my irritated voice. I'm talking about my smooth. I ain't never had, I can't think of off the top of my head a guy who had me down as far as an impersonation. But I've had a lot of women over the years that have had me down. Like some of my closest female friends in real life. They know how to imitate me real well. The way I say, ooh, ooh. That's where it starts. If you don't know how to say, ooh, then you don't know how to impersonate me. Because that's one of my number one words I use with women is ooh, ooh. I'm going to tell you honestly, the best way to sound like me, and I've given this tip to guys, you got to have a voice that sounds like a woman sucking your dick while you're talking. I've heard a lot of women say that about me. They say, Alan, when you're in your smooth, seductive mode, you talk like you got a woman sucking your dick. And sometimes I have. Matter of fact, I'm going to let you watch a clip that I've played before on a couple of YouTube videos. I want you to see if you hear me talking loud or goofy. I'm going to play this clip, and I want you to tell me if at any point during this clip, do you hear me talking either loud or sounding corny/goofy? One of the benefits of BDSM, I wish I could cite specifically the article, but there was an article that came out in 2013 that said those that are involved in the BDSM lifestyle have what? They have more romantic passion, more sexual passion, and the biggest thing they said, compared to traditional couples, greater peace of mind, because each person in the relationship knows their role. You know your role, don't you?
Yes, Daddy.
You know your role, don't you?
Yes, Daddy.
So I love being a sub, Daddy.
I love being a sub, Daddy.
Say it again.
I love being a sub, Daddy.
So I love being a switch, Daddy.
I love being a switch, Daddy.
Yeah. See, when you know your role, relationships are so much easier. When you're honest, they're so much easier. See, what fucks up relationships once you allow this honesty to seep in, head games, general bullshit, egotistical battles for who controls the relationship. Fuck that. BDSM has produced a lot of beneficial perks for myself as well as my subs. Like I said, it's a reciprocal relationship. The daddy takes care of the subs. The subs take care of daddy. And it's just great when everybody knows their role and they communicate their needs to daddy. If they need their girls, daddy takes care of them. Look into the camera and tell the ladies that you love being daddy, so be a good bitch.
I love being Daddy's obedient good bitch.
Daddy likes squeezing on these nice round soft asses. Say, Daddy, you love our asses, don't you?
Daddy, you live right on me, don't you? Daddy, you love our asses, don't you?
See what I'm talking about? Like the way I'm talking right now. Here's the irony, man. Probably no less than 95 to 98% of the time I talk to women, I'm just the opposite of loud. I don't talk loud with women. and this is a story I'm going to tell for at least the third or fourth time. I remember in 2012, I was, as most people know, I used to collaborate with Sasha Dagan, and I was at one of his direct dating summits in Las Vegas. And he had these VIPs that he allowed to come and hang out with some of the featured speakers. If you paid the VIP price for a ticket, you could hang out with, at minimum, one featured speaker and sometimes two or more of the featured speakers. And so these two Caucasian college-age fellas that bought VIP tickets, excuse me. And so they were hanging out with me and Sasha Dagan. And at one point, one of the two guys says, Alan, we know how to impersonate you. And I said, oh, really? They said, yeah. I said, okay. Go for it. Let me see what you got. And I'm thinking it was going to at least be a sincere attempt at trying to sound like me. No, more specific, they didn't just say we know how to impersonate you. They said we know how to impersonate you talking to a woman. That's key. They said we know how to impersonate you talking to a woman. Because there's a big difference. See, like most men, I talk differently with men than I do with women most of the time. Again, when I talk to women, man, the volume of my voice usually drops lower, not higher. The volume of my voice drops lower. So the first guy, he does this loud, overly exaggerated black voice. He acts like he's walking up to a woman and he says, hey, baby, shit, you got a lot of junk in your trunk? I like to tap that ass. I want to fuck the shit out of you with that big, round, juicy ass. And then he started laughing. And I ain't gonna lie, just from a humorous perspective, it was funny. It was entertaining. But I just was like, okay, now where's the real impersonation? Because I just knew he was going to acknowledge that he did, was doing an exaggeration. But to my disappointing surprise, he said, oh, that was the impersonation. I said, that was supposed to be the impersonation of me? And I gave him a look directly in his eyes, like, basically like, motherfucker, are you serious? And he literally thought he was doing me. He said, oh, that's not how you mow one, and particularly when you mow one hardcore, that's not what you do. And I gave him, of course, a look like. And then the second guy, his wasn't quite as exaggerated as the first guy, but his impersonation was loud, and he had this kind of black voice. And I was like, okay, where the fuck are you two getting this from? And they just kind of shrugged their shoulders like, I don't know. I said, no, really, is there a video clip or audio clip where you've heard me talk to a woman like that? And they said, no, not really. I said, well, where did you get that impersonation from? And he was like, well, it just seemed like that's part of your personality. We just thought that's how. I said, come on, man. And then I honestly went from being lighthearted to more serious. And I was looking both of them dead in the eyes. I was like, so you guys think I just walk up to women and sound like a fucking clown? And they start, then they start looking down at the floor, feeling embarrassed. And then to make matters worse, the next day, this Australian PUA, who I've mentioned on my videos a few times before, his name is James Marshall. He does essentially the same thing. he was talking about how he approaches women. And at one point in his presentation, he said, yeah, so you can choose to approach women like me, which is very, very subtle. He started talking about sub-communication, you know. All of these conventional POAs love to emphasize the concept of sub-communication. And that's what James Marshall started talking about. He was like, you know, I sub-communicate my sexual desires and interests to women through my eyes. I sub-communicate through my eyes. He said, you can follow my advice, or you can follow the advice of my fellow speaker, AlanRogerCurrie. You know, Alan, from what I understand, he goes up to women and is like, hey, baby, shoo, baby. I love to get in them draws. And everybody started laughing. I was probably the only one in the room who didn't laugh. I was the only one in the room who didn't laugh. Just about everybody else in the room was laughing. And I cut him a serious look. I cut him a look like, bitch, I don't sound like that motherfucker. You corny, goofy looking motherfucker. So sure enough, what happened? And again, this is my third or fourth time telling this story. I got on stage with my female assistant. She was a lovely Caucasian woman. And we start role playing, and I gave the guys a demonstration of how I talk to women, how I approach them, and how I talk to them. Man, it was so silent in that room, you could hear a mouse fart. Real talk. It was super duper silent. And then sure enough, when I finished my presentation, everybody in the audience was giving me kudos. They was like, and you could tell a portion of the guys were genuinely shocked because they had this impression that I talked to women in this really loud voice. So all these guys are coming to me like, damn, Alan, I didn't know that's how you talk to women. Damn, I'm amazed. Your shit's like real smooth. It's like real smooth. Like some guys, to be truthful, they would, at least 3 guys came to me. They was like, with the classic no homo preface, they was like, hey, Alan, man, like, no homo. But man, when you was talking dirty to your female sister, man, that shit was getting my dick hard, man. Man, that shit was getting my dick hard. You really know how to talk dirty to women, man. You are a master at that shit. I never talk to women real loudly. So now let's go back to Rollo's intro and his lighthearted and exaggerated impersonation. It was either of me or somebody else being direct. I've heard a lot of guys try to suggest that I go up to women and I say either one or two things. Would you like to have sex with me, or are you down to fuck? Would you like to have sex with me, or are you down to fuck? I never in my life gone up to a woman and said either one of those things. Would you like to have sex with me, or are you down to fuck? Most of y'all should know 2 reasons why I would never use that approach. There's at least 2 reasons why I would never use that approach. All right, go ahead.